Influential conversations. Master the art today. Power of conversations. Influential conversations can change people's lives. Conversations start wars. They end wars. They help you find your loved one. They help you learn. They help you grow. They can cut like a knife. Conversations, in my opinion, are the most important skill of the human race. There are three key aspects to being a great influential speaker: curiosity, empathy, and courage. It's important first to understand the context of where the other person is coming from in their conversation. Being an expert in something doesn't mean telling somebody what it is you know. Focus on how your knowledge, that thing that you know, affects their life. First and foremost, stop being an advice monster. We have all been there. I am probably the biggest offender of this. It is easy for me to start spilling advice. It's part of what I do for a living, but I've had to be very measured in the way that I do it. Avoid starting your conversation with well, when I was in your shoes. We've been in those conversations. Your parents probably said something like that to you, or your grandparents, or your boss. We've all been exposed to that. And think back when you hear that, when someone says that to you, what does that immediately make you feel like? Everything that comes after that is sort of viewed through some skepticism. When I was in your shoes makes it about me. If I say that, it makes it about me and not about you. And I'm not helping you if I'm saying that. Instead, practice strategic curiosity. Remember, curiosity, empathy, and courage. First and foremost, be curious in conversations. Before you can influence anything, you have to be curious. Here's a challenge for you. Try to go an entire day without giving advice. I'm telling you, it is tough. I have yet to be able to do it, and I've tried a few times. But by doing it, the sheer fact of trying to do it, you're going to catch yourself so many different times leading with advice before you've been curious, before you've shown any desire to really understand the other person or the other situation. This exercise is really going to help you just be aware what your default is. The power of empathy. There's a lot of definitions out there, and it's common for people to think of empathy and sympathy as the same thing, but they're not. One of the best definitions that I've seen of empathy, or just a fun way to think about it, is from an author named Jon Acuff. And simply, empathy is to care about what the people you care about care about. So, said maybe cleaner, give a crap about the people you care about and the things that are on their mind, what matters to them. That's sort of the first rule of empathy. Now, there is this difference. It's not sympathy. Sympathy is without understanding that person's feelings. Sympathy is just saying, hey, I acknowledge your situation sucks, whatever it may be. It's not putting yourself in that other person's shoes, which is basically what empathy is. Being able to see through the eyes of the other person and experience. And many times, best empathy comes from people that have experienced whatever you are experiencing at the time, or the person that you're talking to. Empathy gets through to the other person faster, and it hits them at their core, and it just builds this connection. So it's important. It's very important to be mindful, be empathetic in the process of building this influential conversation. So be curious, understand the problem from their point of view, and be empathetic. Now, the least influential word ever written, ever spoken is I. Another challenge for you. Try to replace all the I statements in your conversation with you. Doesn't work out perfectly. Why? Because there's a lot of times you need to say I. But if you're conscious of it, again, like the other exercise, you're going to become aware of how often you say I. And in many cases, you don't even mean I, you mean we, or us, or you. But it's so ingrained in us to just default to I. And when we say I, the other person we're talking to sort of steps back. They check out a little bit because they know at that moment they're not important to you in that moment, in that conversation. You're not including them. You're making yourself the center of that conversation, which is not what you want to do if you want to have an influential conversation. Very similar to the other phrase that you've heard a million times, when I was in your shoes. There's another one that we use a lot. What I think, blank. We use it all the time. In essence, we're doing the same thing. We're putting ourselves in the center of that conversation, which is going to push influence away. It's going to make it harder to bring that person along on the journey we want to have and get the outcome that's best for us, best for both of us. Instead, say, what you may wish to do is blank. There's an opportunity for you to share some of your experience, wisdom, been there, done that. Let me shorten your learning curve. But it's a more graceful way to get into that. So what comes after what you may consider doing is a lot different than, well, what I would do. Can you see the difference? And just a last tip on this. It's easy for us to default to we if we're trying to be inclusive and we're trying to use this default thing that makes sure that we're both feeling like we're in the conversation. We'll say we, and we can overuse it. And every time we overuse it, it has less and less impact. And at some point, it actually turns around and starts working against you. So saying we is very powerful, and use it strategically. Don't spread it around as a default way to try to be inclusive. This is an important thing to remember as well. Understand the because, the why. If we're having this conversation and if you're in sales and you're trying to convince somebody or bring somebody to a decision that's, yes, I'll buy, understanding the because is critical. People buy for reasons, and understanding that reason is going to just change it. There was a study done maybe in the 70s. I'm not sure how long ago it was. I think it was called the Xerox study. And it was simply a line of people standing at the Xerox machine in an office setting. And there were 2 or 3 people standing in line, and one person would come up and ask to cut line, ask to step right in front of everybody else. There was a success rate. When that happened, most of the time, that person was told, get to the back of the line. But when that same person went to the front of the line and said, hey, do you mind if I go next? Because, and gave a reason, the people in the line were 30 to 40% more willing to let that person cut line. And here's the thing, sometimes the reason, the because, was silly, it was stupid, it was inconsequential. It wasn't like I had to go to the hospital or anything like that. It was simply, do you mind if I cut in front of you because I need to make copies? Well, so does everybody else. They're in line to do that. But we're so in tune to the because. So look for the because. Share your because. And you're going to be on your way to more influential conversations. Focus on understanding their motivations and connecting with the story that ultimately is behind their decisions. Now, of course, we know we need to build trust. I think we all know that trust is earned. It's not claimed. It's not bestowed. We have to earn trust. Here's a little secret. The formula for trust is curiosity plus empathy equals trust. In any relationship, any conversation, there is a show me that you know me point in that interaction. Find it. Let them know that you see them, you hear them, you understand them. If you're curious and you're empathetic, you will have that information. You will know that. And you'll be able to reflect back to them that you care, that you understand their why, that you understand why they're making whatever decision they're making. And of course, the courage to ask. We have to be curious, we have to be empathetic, and we have to have courage. And the courage is to ask. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves in conversations. We don't want to start right off the bat and ask for the date or the deal or whatever it is that you're trying to get out of that conversation. There's a natural flow. You're curious, you're asking questions, then you move into empathy as you hear some of their story. There's going to be opportunities for you to empathize with them. And then you're going to come to a point where you've built trust and now you can ask. Think of it as an invitation and not a pitch. People can smell out a pitch, a sales pitch, from a mile away. And we all have our guard up for that. So proceed as if this is really just an invitation. It's not a pitch. I'm not asking you to buy. I'm inviting you to take this next step. Make it us versus it and not me versus you. The distinction is there is a problem, right? So they're up until this point, they haven't agreed with your point of view or your offer or your invitation. And there's a reason for it. We'll call that the it. The it. So focus the interaction on us, you and I, ganging up on it, the reason that they're not saying yes. If you've done all these things up to this point, at that point is the switch. That point is where you move into yes territory or I'm with you territory.